responsibility for energy consumers. And he is overseeing the energy transition and how it's designed for households and businesses on the ground. So welcome, Minister, and please join me in welcoming the Minister.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you for IEA for convening this, and thanks for all the work that you do at CLASP as well. As Christine said, I'm the Minister for Energy Consumers in the UK, which I think is a unique role internationally. I don't think there is another government that has a minister specifically dedicated to energy consumers, but I think that it demonstrates the importance that we place on the energy transition and how it interacts with individuals across our country, and how important it is that we take people with us on the transition that we're currently embarking on. And I think the place that I'd probably start is that this conference comes at an absolutely pivotal moment for energy systems right around the world. And as we respond to the volatility and work towards net zero, one message is absolutely clear that energy efficiency remains one of our most powerful tools, not just for reducing emissions, but for delivering affordability, resilience, and for competitiveness. And within that, energy-related products, everything from appliances to heating systems, sits right at the heart of the challenge that we are facing at the moment globally. In the UK, these products account for about 55% of total non-transport energy use, making them one of the single biggest drivers of demand and therefore one of the biggest opportunities for change. The good news is we know what works. Policies that we've implemented, such as minimum energy performance standards, energy labelling, product regulation, have already delivered major benefits, reducing inefficient products, driving innovation, and cutting costs for households and businesses. In fact, existing product policies have been expected to save households around £160 to £210 per year on energy bills, while delivering significant savings for businesses as well. So the foundation that we are building on as we embark on this is strong, but the system, as Christine said, around us it's changing very quickly. And in the UK, we're moving towards a fully decarbonised power system by 2030, just 6 years from now, with a growing share of generation coming from renewable sources. At the same time, we're electrifying heat and transport at pace. And this creates new challenges for us, how to manage a system that's not only lower carbon, but more dynamic, more decentralised, and more reliant on flexibility. And this is where the next generation of appliance policy comes in, because today's appliances, as we all know, are not just passive devices. Increasingly, they are smart, they're capable, and they are connected, and they're capable of responding to the needs of the energy system in real time. They can shift demand to times when electricity is cheaper and cleaner, whether that's heating a home when renewable generation is abundant, or charging a vehicle overnight when overall demand is lower. And as these technologies evolve, we're seeing the emergence of fully integrated intelligent systems within the home, where heating, storage appliances, and vehicles are optimized together. In some cases, this is already being enabled by advanced software and automation, which can respond dynamically to price signals, usage patterns, and external conditions. As these capabilities develop further, including through the use of data-driven optimization and through AI, the potential to reduce costs and improve resilience will only grow. I think we've heard a lot at this conference about the risks of AI, the energy consumption increases, but I think we also have to keep one eye on the fact that AI will also assist us in making this transition and making our systems far more efficient and effective than they are today. Unlocking this potential, because there is huge potential here, but unlocking it requires policy that we're dealing with to evolve. So in the UK, we are building on our product standards framework by introducing new energy smart appliance regulations from next year, 2027, including a smart mandate for technologies with the greatest flexibility potential, such as heat pumps and electric heating systems. This will ensure that as electrification accelerates, smart functionality becomes the default, not the exception. And importantly, looking at this particularly from my role, consumers will remain in control. Households will be able to choose whether to activate these services, and when they do, they can benefit directly. For example, combining smart heating with time of use tariffs can already deliver annual savings of around £130 compared to gas systems, despite electricity prices that are arguably already higher than they need to be. Alongside this, our Smart Secure Electricity Systems programme is putting in place the regulatory and technical foundations for a much, much smarter market. And this includes ensuring interoperability, so consumers are not locked into specific providers or specific technologies and can access the full range of tariffs and services without needing to replace devices. It also means putting a strong emphasis on security and on consumer protection, because as millions of devices become connected, as many of us will understand, cybersecurity and system resilience will become critical. Without robust safeguards, the benefits of flexibility could be undermined by risks to infrastructure, supply, and consumer confidence. And that's why in the UK we're establishing clear frameworks covering everything from device standards to new licensing arrangements to ensure the system is secure, reliable, and trusted. And this is essential to the final point I want to make, making this transition work for consumers, not just in the UK, but right around the world. Smart and efficient appliances have the potential to reduce bills, support system stability, and avoid costly network investment. But those benefits must be accessible. They have to be understandable and visible so that customers see real value. So as we look ahead, the challenge is not simply to make appliances more efficient. That should be an absolute given. The reality is that the world is changing, and the real challenge is to design policies that make products smart, make them flexible, and fully integrated into the energy system while maintaining affordability, security, and trust. Because if we get this right, the impact that we can have is transformative. We move from a system where demand is a constraint to one where every appliance, every home, and every business, and by extension, every person, becomes part of the solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. That was a great way to kick us off. I want to validate that I don't think I have before met someone with the ministerial responsibility for energy consumers. I love it. I talked yesterday on my session about it's where I started in this space, and you can really hear, we talk at class about the benefit for people and planet. You can really hear that coming through. I appreciated that you emphasized not only the energy savings and the consumer savings of money, but the way appliance energy efficiency drives innovation, and bringing that together with your consumer protection, talking about how we're going to give consumers control, but also benefits, and make them all a part of the solution that we're in. So really, really appreciated the way you kicked us off there, balancing both the tried and true as well as the innovation. In our next discussion, before we turn to our panelists, we're going to take a step back and ground ourselves in the current landscape on appliance efficiency policy in this moment, why it matters, and where we're headed. And we have such a powerful and impactful person to set that scene for us. I'm really pleased to introduce my longstanding colleague, Melanie Slade, who is Senior Program Manager at the Energy Efficiency and Inclusive Transitions Office at the IEA, and why we're all here today, so comfortable and challenged in these dialogues. Melanie and her team sit at the center of the global data and analysis that underpins just so much of this policy work. So Melanie, welcome, and thank you so much for kicking us off. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Christine, and my thanks to the Minister as well, because I thought that was a brilliant framing. And I'm going to do the same in the sense of cover both the tried and true and the innovation, or what we hope we'll get from it in a few charts. I have to apologise. I come from the IEA. We like our charts. So I just wanted to really start with why are we here at all, and this is looking at electricity demand growth. From sort of 2024 to 2035, and just look at the blue part of this. This is demand growth in appliances and cooling, and we actually have heat pumps separately. We also have electric vehicles which are connected to these policies. So a lot of what we're seeing in terms of demand growth, what we're predicting, is going to be impacted by the sorts of policies we're talking about today. And they're I just wanted to give an example here of how we can use policies to reduce peak demand, for example, which is very, very expensive to meet, and can challenge our grids, can actually overturn our grids if we're unlucky. So just to show here that there's an additional peak load showed here by a temperature increase of 1 degree. This is an Indian case. We have a 2019 to 2024 observation. This is real data. And then our projection for 2030 is showing how much we can avoid if we use efficient appliances rather than the ones that are currently being bought. So this 2% roughly is extremely valuable, extremely expensive to meet, and can be very important to a country where growing demand is challenging grids. Just another kind of example to show that we can make a difference here. You know, this isn't just talking about abstract numbers, and we're looking here on about the energy consumption of a small apartment in this time in Jakarta. And if we were to have a rule which said that we changed our set point of our air conditioning, we're just showing what the reduction of energy demand would be by making that regulation. And this is something that we've seen happen in a lot of countries in Asia. So having a 26-degree set point, having equipment that's set up out of the box to have that set point, because we find that consumers often buy things, install them, and they don't change the settings. So it's very important that this is an out-of-the-box type of approach. But you can just see here how much energy we can save, money we can save, we can help consumers save if we take some of these measures. Just going back to Christine's mention of the tried and true, I like this chart because it just shows us the evolution over decades of appliance energy efficiency policy. So if anybody thinks we're kind of just tinkering around the edges in terms of making a difference, we have a demonstration here from the US looking at, US was one of the first places to seriously start on appliance policy in the time of the first oil shocks in the early 70s. And some people often talk about appliance policy and even regulation generally as a way of restricting consumers, giving them something less. But what we're seeing here is that by introducing minimum energy performance standards, by challenging industry to do better, we've seen basically an increase in service. This is a household refrigerator. An increase in service because we've got a bigger volume over the years. That's the blue line at the top here. But we can see that the price has actually reduced, and this is something people find hard to believe. More efficiency, bigger appliance, cheaper. And the red in the middle is the very, very pronounced reduction in energy consumption that's been achieved at the same time. So this isn't trivial. This is big stuff. We were involved in an analysis recently which showed that countries like the US and regions like the EU, who have been doing this for 30 years, would be using 25% more electricity today if they hadn't had these appliance policies. So this is not, little stuff. I just wanted to also show a bit of analysis that we think is very important, because we often hear from countries that they can't have more ambitious appliance policies because consumers won't be able to afford the appliances. And that's obviously not acceptable to governments. And what we're showing here is real data. This is crowdsourced data from the market showing efficiency and price. And what we're seeing here is that you can, in each of these different regions, very price-sensitive regions, our red line is showing, a single price marker and a range of efficiencies. So in Southeast Asia, where appliance policy has been practiced for longest of these three markets, you're seeing that there's a lot of models available. All of these yellow dots are models. So there's a huge range. And so these policies are not restricting choice. And there is a large difference in price and of course energy consumption, but they're not related. I mean, you can have a model that's 2 or 3 times more efficient for the same price. I think this is really important. In Latin America, coming down to the middle chart, there's been less competition, less coordination amongst governments on appliance policy. So here we're still seeing the same effect, but we're seeing a much bigger range in price. You haven't quite got that competitive edge happening, but I think we'll see that to come. And then in sub-Saharan Africa, where this whole story of appliance standards is happening, but it's much newer, and there's much less equipment available. Manufacturers aren't marketing themselves so aggressively because the markets are smaller. We're still seeing a big opportunity for efficiency here that doesn't need to cost more. We're still seeing a 2 times kind of multiplier for the same price, but we of course have got less models available. So that's the old stuff. That's the history. Looking at the modern, looking at what we want to do with appliance standards going forward. We want to, of course, be able to avail of the benefits of both shaving pigs and also shifting loads. And the Minister spoke about both of those, and so has Christine. But just to say that because we can save so much energy through these appliance standards, we can reduce peak load, which means that we can reduce investment in expensive peaking plant, and we can use the energy that we have in the system for other things. And for load shifting, we can, of course, use appliance standards to make sure that we have, as the Minister said, products being used at times when renewables are cheap, for example, or other, in fact, any generating assets are cheap. And we can make sure that consumers benefit from those. To do that, it's a bit complicated, and there was a session just before us on this, but we need coordination between many stakeholders and many parts of the system. But here we've just got a bit of a map here, but it's the technologies, it's the digital infrastructure, it's how the markets work, and it's also facilitating consumer participation. We've done some work recently on valuing the flexible demand, putting a dollar number on it, and so we can share that. But it's a really important part of this whole story. Just to say that when we do have the ability to control when an appliance is being used or how much energy it's being used, maybe we don't turn it off, but we power it down, for example. We do have a lot of cost savings, and we're trying to show them here. So the left-hand side, I nearly got my left and right wrong there. The left-hand side of this is showing, both in 2030 and 2050, what we think the range of bill savings is if we practice demand response. And then on the right-hand side here, we're seeing where those savings come from. So a lot of savings coming from EV charging, as you can see, and water heating. They're both obvious opportunities because when we have a lot of power, we can dump that power into hot water or into electric vehicle batteries. And when we don't have so much, we can then avail of it. Benefits, of course, lower bills, enhanced security, because this is homegrown, this is not imported. We have not always reduced in investment needs in grids because a lot of our developing emerging economies need to use more energy, but it can slow down the need for investment, so it can be done in a more planned and more stable way. And of course, we have a reduced environmental impact. So just for the framing of this session, these are some of the sort of policy measures we see potentially for demand flexibility, and these will come out in the panel. So we've got, the idea is, I would suggest, respectfully, that no new minimum efficiency performance standard should be published that doesn't have a demand response requirement in it. It's easily said and difficult to do, but that's where we need to be. We need to make sure that we have the framework for interoperability, so we're not saying that consumers have to buy a particular brand in order to make everything work together. And manufacturers are competing on a level playing field. We need to make sure that we declare these capabilities in our products, so that's our mandatory labelling. And these are all opportunities for product policy here. I think one of the most important ones at the moment, of course, is incentives. So you can encourage people to use these opportunities. And then, of course, information. We always need to empower consumers with information. And I'll stop there, but this is just to kind of provide a backdrop for the conversation. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks. Thanks very much, Mel. It was a really helpful snapshot. I always love that U.S. refrigerator example. It's just such a fun one. There's a great chart that my longstanding colleague Jim McMahon of LB&L used to show that showed all of the models that were eliminated in one of the early refrigerator standards, and literally every model on the market was eliminated. And so when I travel and I hear that we can't do it, or that it's going to cost more, and I think if those of you who've been in a U.S. household, no one would say that our refrigerators were slim, small, petite things delivering low levels of service. And so it really is just an incredible example, and I want to note again, just really hearing that theme of consumers and empowering the end user and how these products and these policies need to serve. That's coming through so much more strongly to me in this session. So with that, we're going to switch to our panelists, our first team of panelists, who are really going to talk about work that sits, frankly, at the core of CLASP's work. The analysis that we've done shows that appliance energy efficiency can deliver roughly 20% of the global energy savings needed by 2030 to meet the COP28 efficiency goal. And you see examples of progress and momentum all over the world, where we're bending the curve, this decade, not just in 2015. So China, for example, has adopted 7 world-leading energy efficiency standards. India recently combined national standards with market transformation for fans. Fans are used by 90% of households, and they drove a 192% increase in efficient manufacturers and a 63% higher production with 25 to 27% price declines, again, proving that point that higher levels of efficiency does not mean more prices. So again, we're going to move into the discussion of these tried and true, but yet underutilized, so urgent to implement and to go at speed and scale, get more momentum in this context. And so with that, I will ask our panelists from the first session, from the first part of the panel, to join me on stage, if I could. And I think the order here is our actually, you can probably sit wherever you'd like. You'll have to cross. You'll just have to cross across. It's a little narrow there, so be careful, especially for the women in heels.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thanks very much to the panelists on our stage. Our first panelist is from Mexico, Mr. Israel Jauregui Narez, who is with us from the Mexican National Commission of Energy Efficiency Use, CANUE. I want to welcome the comments of Mr. Narez. I will put a question to you, which is to, and actually this will be the approach and the format for folks. You will get 1 to 2 questions, depending upon the length of your response and my ability to keep timing under control. And we'll welcome you in order as I call you out. But let's return to Mexico, where we know there has been a robust and a long-standing appliance program. I'd love for you to talk to me a little bit about the success of these programs in terms of energy savings, in terms of emissions, but keeping with the theme, I'd love to hear a little bit about how they impact your consumers. What are these programs doing for Mexican consumers?
Thank you very much. Well, in Mexico, the energy efficiency standards program is the most important energy efficiency initiative currently being implemented in Mexico. It delivers the largest energy savings of any program in the country, reducing both electricity consumption and use of fossil fuels. Currently, about 15 of our energy efficiency standards apply to households, appliances, and equipment, including gas water heater, clean water pumps, clothes washers, refrigerators, air conditioner of different kinds, fluorescent lamps, LED lamps, gas stoves, and solar water heaters. And recently, the clean cooking stuff is the very new standard in Mexico. We are also developing new standards for microwave ovens, fans, coffee makers, TVs, irons, air fryers, and electric water heaters. In total, Mexico has 36 mandatory energy efficiency standards, NOMS. To ensure compliance, we have established a robust conformity assessment infrastructure consisting in 45 product certification bodies, 120 testing laboratories, and more than 200 inspection units located in all the country. It's a program. They have a lot of time with this program, and it's the most effective measure to Mexico to save energy, and it's very well known this program in Mexico City.
That's great. That's great, and thank you. And I know you've highlighted that you have, I believe you said 15 residential appliance products, and I know from the work that we've done in Mexico that you're recently updating many of these and increasing the requirements and expanding the scope. Tell us a little bit about what's coming, what's in the future, and the journey behind how your government is tackling these improvements.
Yeah, now we are preparing 15 new standards, but we are updating 22.
22, all right.
So in CONUE, I think this program is the most important, and the people, we reinforce this area inside CONUE, and now we are expecting that the very new in Mexico is that the efforts to take care of the market.
Yes.
We are looking for these products that don't comply with the standard. So we nowadays we are looking we have as help for the manufacturer and the many other actors for Mexico to ensure that they comply to the standard. And I think this is the most difficult thing
Yes.
to do, because CONUE is not very well today. Is so we have to put like a policy. We have to taste many different equipments.
Yep.
To comply with the standard. I think this is the most important and the most difficult thing to do.
Yeah, you're really, I think, even in this tried and true area, you've reflected a couple of challenges, right, that governments face, which one is updating existing policies while balancing tackling new products and ensuring new products, and then the all-important and so often under-resourced compliance.
Yes.
And so really kicking us off to a great start of talking about sort of what governments are up against in this, even in this more tried and true area. Setting up a great pivot to our next panelist. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Mr. Hubert Zan, who is the Manager of Energy Efficiency Regulation at Ghana's Energy Commission. Ghana has been building out its efficiency program in the context that a lot of countries in the global south, one where we recognize where there's growing energy demand. You already have grid pressure and importance of expanding access. And I know, of course, that the Ghana Energy Commission has been working at the appliance energy efficiency really for an incredibly long time, going back to 2001, I believe, even in the initial partnership. So tell us a little bit, in this context that you work in, what and with such a long history, what has the program delivered so far in terms of impacts, and how do you think about those impacts in the Ghanaian context?
Yeah, so thank you very much. And since I'm taking the floor for the first time, I would like to thank the IEA and the Canadian government for the opportunity to also showcase what Ghana is doing. And most importantly, what we have done is to promote energy efficiency. And Ghana, Sub-Saharan Africa, had a very particular issue where majority of our appliances were used obsolete appliances imported from Europe and other parts of the country. And so the very little electricity we're producing had to be guzzled by these appliances, all in the name of affordability. You know, so it became a very tough task for us to be able to introduce energy efficiency, but also to let the consumer understand that you are purchasing these products at a cheaper cost, but the operational and running cost is going to spend a lot on your toll, on the electricity bills. So that was an impact for us to be able to make, transforming the behavioral decision and purchase decision of the Ghanaian consumer. So once we put the minimum performance in place, we were now able to get products that were efficient to come into the market. Beyond the used appliances, we also had new products that were substandard because, again, you didn't have the minimum performance standards. So we needed to kill two birds with one stone. First of all, prohibit the importation of the used, obsolete second-hand products, and then set the minimum energy performance for whatever product was going to come into the market. And that was the regulatory benchmark we had to put in place. The next step was to look at how are we going to incentivize the Ghanaian consumer to transform the market. And so for lighting, the government procured about 6 million CFL bulbs. That was in 2005, and we replaced it for free. And the idea was to get the consumer to first of all receive the product, and then with time, they see the benefits and they can purchase their own, CFLs. Now we have new technology in terms of lighting. So I believe that the LEDs is the next step we are going to do to make sure that we are changing households to LEDs. Then we went to the refrigerators. We introduced a rebate scheme where we asked Ghanaian consumers to turn in their old fridges for a discount to be able to purchase the new efficient ones. And that came as a very, very good incentive for the Ghanaian consumer because immediately they could see the reduction in the bills that they were paying, And so all in all, we saved about almost 124 megawatts, by phasing out these inefficient appliances. And that alone is what we call the virtual power plant. Imagine the cost that would have incurred for government to build another power plant, for more than 200 megawatts to sustain these inefficient products coming in. So I think that we are on the right path. We started with 3 appliances, fridges, air conditions, and then lighting devices. Now Ghana is proud to mention that we have expanded the scope. And now we have 19 appliances from the homes to the industries where we have electric motors, distribution transformers, and we have also revised the existing refrigerator and air conditioning regulations to make sure that technology, we are not behind as regulators, but rather at par with what the developers and manufacturers are doing. So this is the initial submissions on what Ghana is doing, and we hope that we can create more awareness on this for the Ghanaian consumer because we believe they deserve better.
It's a wonderful thing. It's such an important thing to highlight this equity issue and the prevention of dumping and ensuring that customers on the continent are protected and in Ghana. I also really appreciated you highlighting one of the kind of traditional, starting with residential products and moving into more industrial and commercial products and really pulling out that thread of the importance of revision of policies that, as technology changes and efficiency improves, we have to come back and do it again. The work is never done. I am curious, what, if you could give us in a minute or two that you have, what would help you accelerate your work? As you think about moving faster, moving more to scale, what are the things that you could use and that you think about from your perspective?
Yeah, so I think thinking outside the box, the story has always been about Ghana, sub-Saharan Africa, and we can't be an island on our own. And so most importantly, when you look at the borders, we have a porous border. So no matter how strong we strengthen our regulations, there will still be that leakage of having products coming in from the other neighboring countries. And so I would like to emphasize on harmonization, so that the success story of Ghana is channeled into the blocks, the regional blocks, where perhaps other regions such as ECOWAS, who do not necessarily have these performance in place, can adapt it. And that even makes it easier for the manufacturers. And I know Daiken is here. They are struggling because there are various standards in place. And so to enter into a market, they are wondering, what are we complying to? And so harmonization is very critical as a country.
Yes.
And I believe that will also help
That's
industry
great.
to bring in the right products.
And you are just so helpful because you are setting up the questions for our next speaker so beautifully. It's almost like we worked that out ahead of time. And so thank you very much, Mr. Zan, for your comments. I'm next going to introduce Ms. Faith Mukakwa, speaking to us from South Africa. I'm really pleased actually to be hosting two of the two leaders on the continent talking about this. But Ms. Mukakwa is the General Manager of Energy Efficiency and Demand-Side Management at SENEDE, the South African National Energy Development Institute. And you've been working on harmonization across East and Southern Africa, which has a bit of a reputation of being a difficult job, actually. And so I would love to hear from you a little bit about your perspective on the impact of these harmonization efforts, and what changes do you see on the ground when you get harmonization?
Thank you so much, Christine, and thank you for having me. So harmonization work for us is a very nice angle to tackle. We didn't expect it to be easy, of course, but it's much more difficult than we anticipated, which, I mean, we love a challenge. I think let me speak about the rewarding part first, which is really embedded in the impact that we are seeing. Alignment and the fact that we initially just thought we'll share ideas, share our policies, and see if there's going to be alignment, and of course allow other countries to see what we've been able to do, because we've been doing this since 2005, before there was a MAPS regulation. And of course that regulation has gone through so many phases. We have a policy change or policy update rather, every 5 years. So you can imagine since 2005 what we've been able to do. And I think what we've picked up is that most countries are very clear in terms of what they need and what they struggle with. And that was very nice to actually observe and then just respond or provide support in most cases. That's all they need, really. Because if you think about it, we all use the same appliances manufactured by the same OEMs. And South Africa is a gateway into Africa for a reason. We've been testing, we have the infrastructure, we've got the South African Bureau of Standards that we work very well with. And of course, our regulations are promulgated by the Department of Electricity and Energy, which we have a very nice relationship with. And there's so many other moving parts, but for some reason, we've been able to make it work. So most of the questions were, how do you make it work? Because in other parts, we don't have the Ministry of Energy, but we've got the Ministry of Electricity and other ministries. Or how do we get all those moving parts to work together? So it's actually, before we can harmonize as a region, is the harmonization within our own departments and SOEs that deals with maps. So we were able to share those lessons. And other parts, we also realized that the easiest thing is our own standards and regulation. We didn't know this, but they were written so beautifully that for some countries, they would just take them as make small tweaks and then implement, which was an advantage, and it saves time. And of course, it also avoids, because the longer you take to adopt a policy, the higher the chances of it not being able to be adopted at all in most cases. Because of political changes, even direction. We also have a lot of this emerging problems that really tend to shift our focus. And all of a sudden, appliances are no longer a big topic. So those were some of the big issues. I mean, we even had problems said, people say, how did you deal with load shedding to protect your appliances? So all of those things, it's things that we had answers for, but we just thought it was useless. And then when it comes to challenges, I've already mentioned a challenge of the political changes, which then tend to shift priorities. But I think in terms of specifically maps, it's also maybe the lack of skills and maybe commitment, because they have other policies and other priorities that exist. So what we found is that it's not necessarily the harmonization of policies, it's really the harmonization of the work. Because work can start without a regulation while you gather data to inform a new regulation or a new policy. And so that's how we're able to overcome some of those challenges. And then lastly, it was just a matter of making sure that what we consider to be key issues align with those country key issues. And some of the other countries were behind in terms of some of these key issues. What we dealt with 8-10 years ago, they grappling with it now.
Right.
For us now, the big thing is we cannot worry. For example, I just want to give an example. In South Africa, we've got two worlds. It's a country of two worlds where there's a group of people that always buys the latest appliance, which is fantastic because chances are they're labeled. And then we also have the slow uptakers. They can wait up to 10 years. If the fridge didn't fail, there's no need to change it. And then lastly, we had the issue of what do we do with these appliances? It's good and well when they're running because they're energy efficient, but when you want to get rid of it, what do you do with it? And the issue of refrigerant, because thus you will not see in our policies. So these are some of the lessons that we had to share with the regions without necessarily getting into policy. And it's nice to see some of the regions are trying to work it into their policy to say they can be recycled, and then we can also make sure that we remove the parts and make sure that the refrigerants don't end up in the atmosphere, once again contributing to greenhouse gas emissions. So whatever challenge we've been able to come across in a nutshell, we've been somehow been able to either learn from those countries and come and apply it in South Africa, or work with them to resolve it. And so it's been enriching for them, I hope, as much as it's been for us as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're really highlighting a couple of the points that we know to be true, right? Which is that there is always too few resources in terms of time and technical staff, capability and knowledge and information sharing across can spur.
Yeah.
So that way people get a head start, and there's a peer and exchange to share information and learn. Again, creating some resilience to political change, but also technological innovation, right?
Absolutely.
In the standard kind of getting left behind from the realities of the marketplace, or being too inefficient, frankly, by the time it gets put in place. So it's really inspiring. As much as I know it's hard work to see that you're able to make meaningful progress and have made meaningful progress, and just really thank you for those remarks and that example of tackling the challenge of harmonization. My next speaker is going to take us to a different perspective. We've heard from governments. We're now going to switch a bit to hear from Mr. Katsuyuki Sawai, sorry if I got tried there, who is the Senior Executive Officer of Daikin. I am really interested to hear your critical industry perspective and welcome you to the stage, a manufacturer with a truly global footprint. Tell me a little bit about how Daikin operates across markets. There are very different policy environments, even with our efforts at harmonization. You face varying levels of stringency. How do you navigate the complexity?
Yeah, thank you, Christine. As I mentioned, Daikin is a global air conditioning company, and they're operating in more than 170 countries. Also, we have the more than 100 manufacturing facilities all over the world. In Japan, we have the 4 facilities. The rest of the over 90 facilities overseas. Because climate and the cooling needs vary greatly from one country to another. We have established development and manufacturing bases around the world, not only in Japan but globally, to deliver products tailored to local requirements. Energy efficiency policy also differs significantly by region. While areas such as Europe and Japan have strict standards in place, others still lack sufficient policy or regulations, which can slow the adoption of high-efficiency systems. To address this, our teams around the world closely monitor local regulatory developments and work hand in hand with governments through dialogue and public-private partners to support the advancement of effective policies. I can say, for example, already we have conducted a demonstration project and supported governments in development standards for high-efficiency air conditioners in countries such as China, Brazil, India, Saudi Arabia, and most recently, Nigeria. Last year, we conducted a demonstration of high-efficiency inverter air conditioners under a JICA project in Nigeria, where the demand for air conditioners and associated GHG emissions are projected to increase more than sevenfold by 2050. The results demonstrated that high-efficiency inverter condition can reduce energy consumption and GHG emissions by up to approximately 50% compared to the low efficiency, non-inverter models commonly found on the market, and that the initial investment can be recouped within 1 to 2 years. Through such demonstrations, we informed the Nigerian government and supported the development of energy efficiency standards. Also, you explained we need MEPS, minimum energy performance standard. On top of that, we also need, I can say, energy labeling system also required for each country. Based upon the energy labeling systems, for example, there is 5 steps from lower to up. Each step by step can be put on the price, different one. So customer can choose the level 3 or level 2, but at least minimum standard should be required. Then total energy efficiency can be increased or can be suitable. So MEPS and energy labeling is both is required. Thank you very much.
Thanks, great. And just as a follow-up question, you've hinted at it, but I wonder if you could draw out a little bit what you think of as the role that industry should play in supporting policymakers and helping them make sure that their programs deliver real-world impacts and are as ambitious as possible.
Yeah. So for us, the first step is to demonstrate with clear evidence how much energy can actually be saved across different countries and regions. That is why, as I mentioned earlier, we have conducted demonstration projects in many parts of the world to show the real-world performance of inverter air conditioner under actual operating conditions. The next step is to support the development of energy efficiency standard and labeling system, as I said. We can provide the government with technical support based on our technical expertise. Once such standards and labeling system are in place, we believe it is our responsibility as a manufacturer to ensure the supply and promote the widespread adoption of high-efficiency equipment that meets these requirements.
Really excellent. I appreciated you highlighting there the importance of the partnership between government and industry as we implement these programs and the role that manufacturers like Daikin can play. With that, I'm going to thank our 4 panelists, Mr. Nadas, Mr. Zan, Mr. Mukakwa, and Mr. Sawai. I really appreciated the discussion. So many of the themes of where the challenges lie and the importance of these programs came through in your discussion, and I think you've set a really good example for us to take. I really appreciated, too, Mel highlighted that the standards and labeling programs in the US and Europe are more long-standing, and I just really appreciated these examples from programs around the world that are doing so much good, have been operating for less time, but the impacts are accumulating, and the ambition is there. And so I really appreciated that, and with that, I would ask our panelists from the current panel to depart the stage so we can transition to the second panel and welcome others. But please help me in giving a round of applause.
Good.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. While our panelists, everything okay? Okay, while our panelists for the second panel come to join me, again, feel free to sit as you wish. I'll still call you in the same order. Appreciate having you on stage. We just heard so much about what appliance policy can deliver. But as grids get smarter and renewables scale, it's becoming just as important that appliances can respond to the needs of the grid in real time. That's where demand flexibility comes in, the ability of appliances to shift or reduce their energy use in response to grid signals automatically, and without disturbing the comfort of the people using them, again, centering the human beings using these devices. This is not an idea that's theoretical. China, for example, is already embedding grid response capabilities directly into their appliance standards. The US is moving grid interactive requirements into building codes and appliance standards at the state level. France has integrated flexibility into its core market architecture. So we're gonna, in this next session with this esteemed group of guests, explore what it's gonna take to evolve policy and enable a truly demand-flexible future. And so with that, we'll get started. Welcome, Mr. Baichuan. Speaker number 1 is Dr. Marcus Pellinor, who is with the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Authority, EECA, of New Zealand. Welcome. We're glad to have you here. New Zealand really is a leader in demand response technology, but the approach is different from the other countries that I mentioned previously, and so I would love for you to walk us through how New Zealand has built the mandate to incorporate demand response into product policy and what the process looked like.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. This is the final session, so we've saved the best for last. Previous panel was excellent as well. So I'm originally from Montreal, so this is also a great homecoming, but
Nice.
It's been 20 plus years in New Zealand. We've taken a very different approach for New Zealand. We've done much more of a bottom-up type of push rather than top-down. So rather than thinking about central regulation, we have gone with voluntary standards, publicly available specifications for technologies, and then working groups with industry. So working with stakeholders and industry groups has been really, really important for us. It's also been one of our biggest challenges. So how we get stakeholders, businesses, communities to come on this journey and see the value of flexibility has been a big challenge. And that's probably one of the things that we have done differently is through try and build consensus from the bottom up. So it was really good to hear the minister talk about the value of flexibility and how we put consumers at the center. And that's really important for us at ICA. We are a consumer-led organization, or I should say like a consumer-first organization. We are part of the New Zealand government, but we deliver energy programs on the ground. And I think it is really important when we talk about flexibility, we talk about the benefits of flexibility at the user level, at the business, or for the grid. It's quite easy to get into the technical detail, and then we lose sight of who we are doing this for, which is for people and for society. And so I think starting with that principle has been really important for us. And that's often where we find common ground with industry and with different stakeholders. So we've been successful. We started with electric vehicle chargers as a publicly available standard, creating a voluntary type of mandate for smartness and flexibility. We're looking at inverters, we're looking at home energy management systems, we're looking at how you can try and retrofit flexibility onto existing appliances, but that is all being done as much as possible with consensus from the bottom up. Probably just want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges.
Yeah, that'd be great.
A bit of an example, like you've just got different competing approaches or priorities. So we heard the minister talk about the importance of agency, consumer agency or energy user agency to be able to opt into a flexibility system. We are big advocates of that. We support that. However, if you're a lines business looking at distributing electricity and you're trying to offset your capital program, you need to be confident that when you push a button, you're going to be able to shave the peak or shift the peak of a certain amount.
Right.
So how do you balance free choice and agency with the type of certainty and reliability that line businesses are looking for? And likewise, it's the same with energy companies and retailers. So I look at other jurisdictions. I think what Octopus has done in the UK, for example, has been really, really interesting in being able to prove the case without letting perfect get in the way of good for what flexibility can offer. I also think another big tension is not really the right word, but like another area of discussion with us has been open communication standards and innovation. We are really big advocates of enabling a product market, enabling consumer choice through open communication standards, open communication protocols. So the user can choose which appliances, what service provider, what aggregator they want to sell their flexibility to, and then they should see the value. And we think as a regulator, we can enable that market by having really clear requirements on open communication protocols and standards. However, there's a trade-off, at least that's being discussed around the role of innovation and being able to protect IP and development versus open standards. And how do you support innovation while also ensuring that you're not locking folks into proprietary networks? I think it's, and I'll get my numbers wrong here, but I think it was Juicebox, or it was like a big EV charger, smart chargers here in not here, but in North America, in the States. And it was one of the largest kind of charging networks, and it was built on a proprietary network. And it was all going well until it didn't go well. And then the company got liquidated, and all of a sudden, all those smart chargers became dumb chargers for the customer. Right. And there was no ability to then unlock that value around flexibility because the communication protocols were private. And so we really don't want to see that.
Yeah. Nobody does.
No. So it's a bit of a long, rambling journey. Like I'll summarize by saying we take a bottom-first approach. We are drawing in our stakeholders and working through a voluntary kind of pull rather than push policy from the top. And we're trying to surface those discussions and trade-offs with industry partners and stakeholders, and then just basically having at it publicly and,
Great.
in a great dialogue, that then means you've got consensus for the mandates, for the standards,
Right.
which then make it easy for the politicians to follow through with.
Interesting, really interesting examples. I took some really interesting notes of this challenge, the tension between free agency versus certainty and perfect versus good enough. I feel like there's like a philosophical lesson in there that's much broader than energy efficiency, but about this moment in the world with the onset of AI and how we're all going to manage. But really interesting to hear that sort of bottom-up, stakeholder-based approach. I can imagine there were some tensions and some challenges and some wrestling as you guys, as you work that. So appreciate those comments and the food for thought. My next speaker, Ms. Rebecca Foster, is the CEO of VEIC, the Vermont Energy Investment Corporation based in the US. Welcome, Rebecca. Really a nonprofit at the forefront of the energy transformation in the United States. I really want to talk to you. Ms. Foster, the U.S. picture on demand flexibility is just so interesting. Some states are global leaders, others have barely started. And there's the state programs and utility programs. Curious how states are responding to utility programs, but also what's driving the difference between those that are moving fast and those that aren't.
Great question, Christine, and it's great to be here. I just want to thank the IEA, Government of Canada, and Hydro-Quebec for hosting the conference and having me here today. So VEIC is a nonprofit, as Christine said, and for 40 years now we've been focused on clean energy. Our foundation is energy efficiency, but over the last 5 years we've spent about 50 projects and programs around the U.S. Getting into demand flexibility. So that's the perspective I'm bringing today. And the U.S. is a very diverse marketplace for demand flexibility. Some of that is driven in wholesale markets. So U.S. is organized into 6 different regions for wholesale markets. All of those have been allowed to treat demand response as a capacity resource since the early 2000s. Many of them have set up capacity markets where customers and aggregators who can show demand reductions can receive capacity payments. And that's how the vast majority of demand flexibility in the U.S. has taken place over the last 20 years. But recently, in the retail markets, states have been paying much more attention. And the reasons are, varied, but I think there are reasons that are very relevant globally. The first reason is that demand is projected to increase significantly in almost every region of the U.S. I come from New England, just south of here, where we do not see a huge percentage of data centers coming into our region. But even without that, just based on the electrification of transportation and heating, our region is expected to see an increase in electricity demand of 9% over the next decade. So many regions are seeing numbers even higher than that, and that leaves the utilities looking for options. The first place they would normally look is new supply. But again, regions have a lot of constraints getting new supply built, whether those are environmental reviews, not in my backyard concerns, or just delays in getting approvals to interconnect into the grid. In the mid-Atlantic of the United States, the independent system operator there had a backlog of 800 projects and 220 gigawatts of new supply that was not getting connected, and they just updated their entire interconnection process to try and get through that backlog more quickly. So in the US, many states are seeing increase in demand, no supply on the horizon. And then the third factor, which again is relevant globally, is energy is seen as increasingly unaffordable. So in the US, electricity costs and natural gas costs have both increased on the average of 40% over the last 7 years. And so regulators, utility leaders are looking at this confluence of events. Demand is rising, there's no new supply, and even if there were, customers are not willing to put that onto the bill. They're really in a difficult position. As a result, demand flexibility becomes the answer. If we can better use the grid we have today, better use the capacity we have today, we can avoid those new investments in our infrastructure and use our grid more effectively, more efficiently. So as utilities are looking at that question, they're starting to think about, what sector they should focus on for demand flexibility, what appliances they should focus on, how will they measure the savings, and what's the baseline, how much should they compensate customers or aggregators, how will the utility themselves be compensated since they're not building new supply and putting it into their rate base. So all of these questions are questions that I think governments are very well suited to help answer and to guide through the creation of policy frameworks that can then unleash more demand flexibility at a state and local level.
Right, but really also too in partnership with the utilities who are really facing this front. I really liked the way you described essentially that this flexibility of demand, this grid responsiveness, is really an answer to the affordability crisis. And one of the few resources we have on the table to address that head on. We're going to hear a little bit more now from the utility perspective. I'm going to introduce my next speaker, Mr. Etienne Sincere, who is the Senior Business Development Delegate for Hydro-Quebec Canada. We know that Hydro-Quebec has been doing some really interesting work on demand flexibility, including a program retrofitting water heaters so that they respond directly to the grid signals, really being where in the minute where Rebecca has talked about. Tell us a little bit more about this program. Tell us how it works, what it's delivered, and what did it take to implement?
Thank you, Jeff, for having me over here, and bienvenue à Montréal. Listen, Hydro-Quebec is running a utility that's a little different from our neighbors. We're pretty much water heating in Quebec is already 95+% electric. So the advantage we have with our over 2 million households, single-family houses, is that pretty much all of those had a water heater in somewhere in their basement. So tackling that opportunity was primal. So we didn't start in the last years. Actually, about 20 years ago, we already started with a very standard low-tech system to reduce the actual power of the water heater so that the actual use factor was larger and the actual power draw was lower. But that had a limit. We couldn't put just a minimum value. So the gain was there, the cost was low, but the real aspect on the demand response was not really there. So once our AMI system was put it on, so our metering, so we're 100% metered with connected meters. So that enabled us back in about 10 years ago to see what could be done more with those water heaters to go beyond the simple low tech. So we kind of implemented the high tech version of things, getting connectivity inside, getting the most out of the water heaters, and that's where we put and we started to deploy this technology. So again, we use that storage value just for, it's about 12 to 15 kilowatt hours of storage in a single water heater. And it's a message for our neighbors. Basically, if decarbonization goes along, standard gas water heaters that we see into our neighboring will become electric water heaters. So that technology is there for the taking. So it's something that can be applied as well. So again, we try to implement that. We start with those it's not very high tech. It's actually a simple device that cuts the power to those water heaters. Storage is there. The comfort is guaranteed with the customer, and they use the water as normal. And within those 2, 3, 4 hours of demand response events, that water heater is simply shut off, and it's back online a few hours later. And the simple fact that we have 2 million of those water heaters or more deployed into the residential market, it's a fact that just cannot be avoided. So that's a main gain. And right now, I just got the numbers from my colleague a few days ago, and we're about 40,000, 45,000 of those water heaters that have been implemented with that control within a group of about 450,000 customers that have some sort of demand response response, basically. So it enables us to get about 40 megawatts of demand response, and it's what drives us to actually increase that value. And the way we're doing the deployment is basically every time someone gets in out of those 450,000 customers, there's a few that are not connected that do manual setups. We want to get them into the controllable. We see the advantage of getting that control in, and every time a door gets open, we make sure that we put that device into their water heaters as the opportunity that gets on. So that's how we've been doing, and we're just ramping it up and trying to do as much as possible.
Yeah, it's a really interesting discussion. I think one of the interesting aspects of the program is that the benefits are shared with your consumers.
That's right.
In 1 to 2 minutes,
I'll take
tell us a little bit about how that works.
Basically, it's all based on dynamic pricing. So the simple fact that this is set up and directly assigned with those critical peak pricing events, a portion of that gain is obviously kept for us, but the rest is directly supplied with the dynamic rate. So it works perfectly synchronized with the rates. And since the commands and the controls are off the hands of the users, they get the full benefit without raising a finger to do that drop of the requirement. So it's a win-win situation. They still get the comfort because of that storage. We get the shifting out of those critical peak hours, and that's the simplest. There's a lot more chargers, as we talked about electric chargers and also thermostats for heating. But I want to make sure that water heating, which is about 20% of that load in a yearly basis, is tackled with that solution.
Great. Appreciate you elucidating that a little bit more. I'm intrigued about the role of government, the role of utilities, and sort of the interplay between. And we'll come back around to that. But we have another speaker that's going to give us a bit of a government perspective. Dr. Bai Chuan of NDRC China, the Energy Research Institute. NDRC is China's National Development and Reform Commission. I want to go to Jiangsu, where it was launched, China's first 1 million kilowatt residential virtual power plant in January of 2025. It used AI, IoT, and smart appliances to aggregate household electricity demand, especially from ACs, into a flexible resource that helped balance out the renewable energy supply and reduce peak electricity demand. And so, Dr. Bai, China's context is unique. Electricity prices are largely fixed, which does change the incentive structure considerably compared to markets with dynamic pricing. Tell us a little bit about this Jiangsu demand response program. What did it look like in practice, and what did it deliver?
Oh, thank you. I'm very delighted to be invited to be coming here by IEA and the Canadian government. This is a very interesting topic because Jiangsu, the event of Jiangsu is very special because Jiangsu's electricity demand is growing very rapidly. And the peaking hour of Jiangsu province is only 36 hours. So it's very short time. So there's, for the government of Jiangsu, there's choices: build new power plant or use the demand side management. So for building for using the demand side management, the cost is only 45% of the cost of building a new coal-fired power plant, and only 60% of building a natural gas-based power plant. and only 35% of building a hydro pump power plant. So this is the cheapest option for the government. So the demand side management is very special in Jiangsu province because they have day-to-day regulations and day-to-day monitoring of electricity consumption in Jiangsu province. They have about 33,000 electricity of consumption by commercial buildings and 28,000 electricity consumption of public institutions and 42 million electricity monitoring of residential buildings. So they choose some of the buildings into the demand side management pilot. When the peaking load comes, they will switch off some of the air conditioners, similar to the water heater in Canadian government, and they provide charge. They provide fees for the service. Usually, when you buy electricity in Jiangsu province, it's only 0.2 US dollar per kilowatt hour. But they pay for this kind of service is about 10 times of price, which means 1.5 to $2 per kilowatt hour for the residential buildings or for the commercial buildings. So this is a new type of commercial mode in Jiangsu province. This is very interesting. And Jiangsu State Grid company helped this pilot because they installed the remote control system to the buildings and to the air conditioners. So this is a precondition of the whole system, and automatic design and automatic remote control system is managed. So there are many technological pilots also together with commercial mode in Jiangsu province. This is very interesting. Thank you.
It is really interesting and as you said, unique. And so I'm curious if you could muse a little bit on how you think this model could be applied outside of China.
I think this is a very important topic because flexibility is becoming more and more important, not only in China but also in the world, especially in the background of the more and more renewables and PVs. So the awareness of flexible resources and demand side management is the most important, the awareness. And the second one is there are many preconditions. For example, the linkage between the air conditioners or water heaters together with the power system. This is a kind of new infrastructure.
Right.
So the remote system, something like the charging pole of the electric vehicles, the government should establish something, is to expend some money to establish this kind of smart system. And then this smart system could operate afterwards. The third one is a very useful commercial mode should be established because the energy balance, especially the power grid system, is different in different regions. So the pricing system, how to set this price to introduce more flexible resources. For example, the water heaters, the electric vehicles, or more air conditioners into the whole smart system should be introduced in the whole system. This is a long-term solution for the whole system. Thank you.
That's great. That's great. I'm looking at time. We are at time, but we started a little bit late. So I think, yes, I'm getting a 5-minute signal. And I'm going to try to bring us home here, recognizing that I am all that stands between you and the end of the session. But I'm really interested in, Rebecca, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot here, that we've heard from utilities, we've heard from government at the national level, we've heard a little bit of a provincial, state, municipal, citywide efforts as well. And VEIC sort of works across, as a nonprofit, you sort of partner with all of these groups. So I guess I'd like to ask you to help me bring it home as we think about demand flexibility, and what we have to challenge here. What do you think the role of those different entities are, just in a word or two, to help us contextualize as we sum up?
Great question. So Christine and I both started our careers at the Consortium for Energy Efficiency, so likely think about this in the same kind of way, which is the power of collaboration. And I think each of the players you mentioned has a really critical role to play, and none of them alone can accomplish the kind of transition that we are all seeking for our energy system. So I think manufacturers need to bring to the table the knowledge of new product technologies, what's coming down the pike, the different control systems. Utilities have to bring to the table their view of system needs and the alternative case of, if we don't do flexibility, what are the costs going to be that accrue to the entire system and all ratepayers. Governance, they need to provide that shining light of, this is the vision for what we want to see in the future, just like we heard earlier at the start of the session. This is the kind of future we want to build for our constituents, and can be the convener, I think, of bringing those together. And then the one group you didn't mention that I think is so important, you mentioned this, Marco, is the customer. We all need to be designing this future energy system to meet the customer's needs and make sure that we are paying particular attention to low-income customers, underserved and disadvantaged communities, those that really have a high price to pay if they are left behind in the energy transition. So that's my quick synopsis of each of the roles that we all have to play. And I think keeping the customer's needs at the center will help us navigate the transition as effectively as possible.
Yeah, that's a wonderful setup. For those of you who, for the closing, those of you who know the CLASP, the first word in our name used to be collaboration. And so I am a huge proponent. And I think that is what has stood out to me in these two sessions, is that none of this happens in isolation, actually, that it takes this collaboration of a variety of actors, whether or not we're talking about efficiency policy in Mexico, a really unique stakeholder-based bottom-up experiment in on-demand flexibility in New Zealand, the utility in Quebec, China. And so we really do need for all of these aspects, all of these stakeholders, to be moving in a common direction to achieve these goals, both of getting as much energy savings, as much climate mitigation, as much affordability, as much consumer protection, and as much demand flexibility and grid resilience as we can from our appliance policy. I really, I go to a lot of these events. I've been really inspired, actually, by these conversations in the last couple of days. Seeing long-standing friends who've been working on this work for a really long time, continuing to deliver the tried and true, and really rising to the innovative challenge that we have in front of us in a world of increasing complexity. And so I just want to thank all of the panelists in the second session, all of the panelists in the first session, and just express deep gratitude to the IEA for allowing me to moderate this session and hopefully guide you through. I think it was a really challenging and interesting discussion. Gave me lots of food for thought. So let's go forth and continue to do the good work that we all do and learn from each other's examples and each other's models. So huge gratitude to the speakers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.